I'm going to demonstrate to you now the SAA Interactive Acrylics. That's these paints here. And the chroma paints do not dry on the surface, they just dry through. So as soon as they feel a bit tacky, you just simply add water and get them going again. The paintings I've been doing here are mainly from the south of France, where we run the painting holidays. This is actually the village where I live. I live just behind that church. And mainly the starting point is just to get those shapes on there, how big everything is, the position of everything. If you were standing there in real life, not from a photograph like I'm doing now, you don't know straight away how much of that scene you're taking. So that is really your first job, is to stand there and look up at the mountain and the village and decide what's actually going into that framework, what's actually going to fit in there. That's a really big decision. We'll start with the composition. I'll just take a little bit of water with some white paint, a little bit of ochre, just to give me something to draw with. Very, very fluid, lots of water in there, and start to position everything. Positioning is two-dimensional because I'm working on a two-dimensional surface, actually from a two-dimensional surface, so it's easy. But if in real life it would be three-dimensional, and you have to learn to measure. You have to learn to stand in front of things and measure in 2 dimensions. The mountain, obviously way up here somewhere, running down, over here, out there and down there, and then just run that up. And then it curls round a bit and slopes down again. So let's start with the sky. We'll just start with a load of white here like this with a bit of ultramarine in it. And I'll add a little bit of red at the same time to soften it down. Maybe a bit of ochre as well. So it's a very soft sky. I'm using the slow medium so that I can keep this as wet as I can during this process of getting it all laid on here. A lot of paint to put on here. And I want to keep that wet as I go along. So I'll just give that another spray. So you can see it's hard to know straight away if that's the right colour, so just start putting a load of colour on. Might go a little bit darker, like that. And these greens go down here. They get a little bit lighter actually as they come down here like this. We'll just switch over to using a little bit warmer the colour, so a little bit of ochre into there. Just see how that looks on there. A little bit of red into it. So a lot of this colour just coming down here. Down on this side is cooler because it's in the shadow side. Just keep it all nice and wet. Greens on this side. Just introducing a little bit more colour now. Which is what I'm doing now, just looking for to the balance of these colours, looking what I've got to do to make it more convincing. It's not copying those colours exactly, it's getting the relationship of colours. So if you see one green is dark and the green behind is a completely different green, you don't have to match those greens, you just have to get the same relationship between them. These cypress trees. As soon as they start to feel a bit tacky, you just can re-wet them and keep them going. So that means you can keep your palette wet as long as you want. So I've been using this palette all morning and it's still totally wet. And that's just by spraying it with water. If it gets a little bit too dry and the water is not rehydrating it, then there's another product called the unlocking formula, which you can use into it, and that will rehydrate it, bring it back to life. I've got ultramarine and burnt umber, burnt sienna, crimson, naphthol red. So I've got one red which is more towards a pure red and one is a more orangey red. Ochre, cadmium yellow and white. So let's look at the sky, and I think the colour, everything about it is okay. It just needs repainting. So let's start. Just repaint it. Get some ultramarine into some white, add a little bit of orange, add a little bit of yellow ochre down below here like that. So those are the three colours that are going into it. Use plenty of slow medium, which I've got here, to mix that all together. Like that, so that now that it's got a much thicker texture, as you can see to this side. Looks less scrapey. And as the more I work it like that, obviously the more solid that looks. I'll cut in quite tightly round this mountain here, like this, to give it a nice sharp edge. Makes the rock come out a little bit more. Make sure that stays nice and wet. And so we have a much more solid looking sky. Try to avoid that where your brushstroke runs down the mountain. So you've got to try and integrate that up like that, and that's why this paint is good, because you can keep doing that wetting wet. With normal acrylics this would be dry now on this side by the time you got over there. It would be a nightmare trying to do this sky with normal acrylics, absolute nightmare. So those little catches of light are quite nice, like that. You don't have to draw every tree and every house and every window, but you do need to just put bits and pieces in. Now we have to keep this wet, especially the palette, which I can feel is just getting a little bit tacky in this area here. So just keep that wet, keep this wet so I can keep working. It's not about putting on more and more detail. It's about getting the balance of detail right. That's got to go in there somewhere. Just like that. So we'll take some of the yellow into this area and get a warmer looking green, sunnier looking green. Just try a little bit of it here and there first. That's maybe about right actually. It doesn't want to be too strong. Okay, that one's finished. Thank you very much.